Real Entrepreneurs TV. We have another excellent episode. Really excited. Good friend of mine, Travis Darnell, here today. Travis Darnell is a Master's of Arts and licensed psychological counselor here in Louisiana. And we really want to drill down on how else we can service aspiring and current entrepreneurs, and also family members and friends in our circle during this COVID situation. So his specialty is servicing people with mental health challenges and counseling them through that. And then also some resources that are available clinically, also through social services that he has access to and would like to share with the audience. So, morning, Travis. How you doing?
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Thank you for your time. I know this is a challenging time for everybody, but I think the conversations that we had before, this episode, the information is very useful. So can you kind of just let people know exactly from your perspective what you do day to day with those Masters of Arts and licensed psychological counselor credentials before this crisis? What did normal day-to-day work look like for you?
Well, a normal day-to-day work schedule for me typically would be a little bit different from your normal therapist because I am a teacher. So I'm a certified high school history teacher. That's my bread and butter right now at this point. So, I mean, I would get up, go to work, teach my history courses, coach, and then after that, I would see at least 3 to 4 clients per day. And that's what a normal day would look like for me. And as I said, I work mostly with adolescents, kids who are from at-risk environments, who may struggle from depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, all of those sorts of things. And those have been the people who I've worked with for the most part in my practice. And I've also worked with some adults who struggle from substance abuse and other things. So I have a variety of different clients who I work with, but that's normally what a regular day would look like for me during the normal times.
Gotcha. So I know right now is not a normal time. So what issues are you seeing in your community? Because I'm sure whatever those issues are, they're happening in other communities, nationwide, worldwide. So what are some issues that you've been seeing most recently?
The biggest issue that I'm seeing right now, and I don't know if it's necessarily an issue, is fear. People are fearful. People fear leaving their homes to go out to grocery shop. People fear going to the doctor's office. People fear being around other people due to the fact that what all the things that the media is putting out there, people are just afraid of catching the disease. Some of the other things that people are fearful about is, am I gonna have a job? Will I be able to feed my family? You know, those are some of the other fears that are plaguing my community right now. So economics, socially, physically, everything that you can imagine that could happen to a person is basically plaguing the community right now. People are just so fearful. That's the big thing right now. Fear. Fear is all everywhere amongst us.
And normally, so from a mental health standpoint, what is the or what's some suggested ways to deal with fear as an emotion? So, and I want to add to that, how is fear kind of defined in the mental health world? Is that like an emotion? Is that chemical? Is that how is that defined?
I have I guess you could say an acronym, false evidence appearing real.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening right now with fear is whenever you're a therapist, you work with 2 things with the person for the most part. You're going to deal with irrational thoughts and rational thoughts. And I can just kind of go off into left field and give you an example. Let's say that you were a person who struggled with anxiety, correct? And you have a fear of going into Walmart because you feel like everybody's staring at you and everybody is judging you. But for the most part, that's irrational. So we could use some things to kind of get you through that situation to where you could learn how to cope and do everything, everyday normal things that most people do. But what's happening right now is that the fear that most people are dealing with is not necessarily irrational. Most of those fears that those people have right now are very much real. So we as therapists have to do a little bit more than what it is that we used to do, where we were just able to sit behind our desk. We really have to get out there right now to help people find solutions that are going to help them now. So normally what a therapist wants to do is you're going to work with that person from 5 to 8 weeks. But, you know, a person walks into your office and they're hungry and their kids are hungry and, you know, there's no income coming in. We have to deal with that right now. And that's what makes it different from what we used to do a week ago to what we're doing right now.
Got it. So for just to backpedal a little bit, the reasons behind fear, right? Loss of income, uncertainty right now. What are some action steps? Because Real Entrepreneurs TV, this is a no excuse zone. So even though we are in the midst of a challenging time, what are some action items that a person can apply to kind of cope with that?
Okay, there are some action items. For instance, I have right here, if you are someone who lives in the state of Louisiana and other states, I know right now in my home state, the Louisiana Office of Behavioral Health is offering free counseling services. And they don't care if you have insurance, if you don't have insurance, they're not concerned about that. They're offering counseling services to anyone who's been affected by this pandemic. And I mean, I have that number and I'll repeat it. The number is 1-866-310-7977. And I think that that's critical because before a person can get out and say, I'm going to take actions, there are some things that I need to do to better myself, they have to be mentally sound. And speaking to a therapist will allow those people to say, hey, here's what I need to do. Let me take a step back. Let me calm down and let me find the programs and the things that are going to allow me to be able to live during this crisis. So in our state, we have that, and it's a free service where people can call and they can receive free mental health services at no charge.
And even so, furthermore, in addition to that service, how are social workers helpful right now for people that can locate or need to locate social workers? How can they locate a social worker, and how are their services beneficial right now?
Okay, well, I'll answer that question in two parts. First off, people can go to Psychology Today. And Psychology Today, you can go in, you can type in.
Psychologytoday.com?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And they can go to that web page, they can type in an area code. And that area code will not only tell you who's a social worker, who's a counselor, or who's a psychologist, it's gonna list everyone in the helping profession. So if you're looking for a social worker in your area, you can find that person. If you're looking for a psychological counselor, you can find that person. If you're looking for a psychiatrist, you can find that person. If you're looking for a psychologist, you can find that person. Any person that's, or any professional in the helping profession can be found at psychologytoday.com.
Got it. And that's psychologytoday.com. And what should I expect if I reach out to somebody in my area that's a social worker?
Well, social workers are unique. I'm a licensed psychological counselor. We're all in the helping profession. But each, psychologist is different from a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist differs from a psychological counselor. A psychological counselor is different from a social worker. What makes a social worker, and particularly a licensed social worker, unique is the fact that they have training to do the same type of counseling that I do, but they also still get out there and they provide the additional services that people in a crisis may need. So they have all of the connections to different agencies and different hotlines and different outreach centers, to where if they're dealing with somebody who needs a service, they're so connected into that, because that's one of the specialties that that social workers are able to give. And that's what makes them, the social working profession, unique from all of the other helping professions.
Okay, and those services are bilingual?
Most of the services, I can't answer that with 100% certainty, but I am pretty certain that if a service is being offered by the state of Louisiana or any other state, and there's tax money that's being, that's running that service, it is probably a high probability that it's going to be bilingual.
Got it. And
yeah, because I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's perfect. So on the economic side, so for the people that are having a challenging time through income, with Real Entrepreneurs TV, aspiring current entrepreneurs, in a lot of cases, our audience, all of those actual employers, what suggestions do you have during the time where there is a lack of resources in a community? What suggestions can you make to those people to be proactive while we wait for the situation to pass?
I would say if I had a client and you're walking into my office right now, what I would do is we're going to look at the budget, okay? Let's look at what you make per month. If you have a spouse, let's take that, let's combine it. Let's see what you guys are making per month. So I'm just going to write down that we have a family and they're making $1,200 a month. Let's delegate a certain amount of money to groceries. We're going to use a certain amount of money to pay our utilities, and we're going to use a certain amount of money to buy household needs. And if we're still able to meet all of our needs, continue to do it. One of the things that I hear people in the community saying now is that we don't have to pay. They're giving us a month to not have to pay bills and not have to do this. And I would say that that's a huge mistake. You always want to have some cash on hand. And that's the way that I live personally. So I think that if you can still get out and manage your bills and do what you need to do for yourself, continue to do that, save a little bit of cash, but don't go out and spend on things that you don't necessarily need. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the time right now to go and buy a new home or a new vehicle or any of those big purchases. But manage your money as best as you can so that you can get through this crisis.
And what's some resources that you've seen from your experience that's been helpful with helping people understanding, creating, and applying financial budgets?
Well, I don't work with financial budgets necessarily in particular, so I can't really answer that question.
Well, any YouTube channels or any books or resources that you've seen?
Well, Emil, they can come directly to you, man, because that's one of the things that you do. So I'm going to have to say you first.
Okay.
If you have a person in your family who may be a CPA, a person in your family who may have been a business major, there's Dave Ramsey. We all know who Dave Ramsey is, but he's not the only guy. He's not the only guy out there. There's a multiple people out there on YouTube and other sources, even if you still have access to your library, where you can go and find out how do I manage money in a crisis. So there are a ton of sources out there that can help people with that.
And I'm glad you mentioned library. So the application Overdrive has an app called LIBBY, and LIBBY. That's LI, B as in boy, B as in boy, Y. And they allow you to rent virtually and electronic books from the library nationwide. So if you have an iPhone, you have an Android, you can download the app Libby, LIBBY. Any book that is electronic, if it's been digitized in a library nationwide, all you need is a library card, and you can rent books from the library. And it's the same way. It's 14-day rentals if you need to extend it, if you want to put something on hold. So those financial management books, you can put that into the subject, and during this time, if you had a stay-at-home order, you can read as much as you want to for free. There's audio books on YouTube on the same subject. You can listen to those for free. Dave Ramsey is a resource. And we do have Real Entrepreneurs TV coaching calls that'll coach you through those financial challenges as well. So I think those are excellent suggestions, Travis. So just to recap, you're seeing economic challenges right now. You're seeing lack of resources. So that's causing the fear and anxiety in people right now. So as a mental health professional, these are pretty common. Well, how common is fear and anxiety already on a daily basis?
I would have to say that, and I haven't been practicing, 40 or 50 years. I've only been in the business for about 5 years or so, but I would say that at least a good 80% of the people who I see in my practice, 12 and older, have some form of anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. And it's huge. And, I don't want to turn this into another show, but especially with men, there are so many men who struggle with it. So we look at depression and anxiety as something that's huge in, amongst females, but there's a large percentage of men who also suffer with depression and anxiety. It's a huge thing that we need to tackle, not only right now, just in general.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I asked, I just wanted to get an understanding of what's normal, because everything that was normal is now amplified, right? If people were in financial challenges on a normal basis, now with a lack of resources, it's been amplified. If you were dealing with fear,
hello?
Yeah, you still there? Can you hear me? Okay, and we know anxiety would be amplified, the feeling of being overwhelmed, depression. So we definitely want to leave at the end of this episode people with more tools and takeaways to apply. So how do you normally, with clients, how do you normally suggest dealing with those emotions of anxiety, fear, uncertainty, depression, and being overwhelmed? What does a session with you look and sound like if we come to you with those emotions?
I can tell you this, with anxiety and depression, one thing that I've learned is that most people want to have somebody to reach out and talk to. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, not only do I use this, and I'll get to this one later, I use something that's called cognitive behavior therapy. But another great form of therapy is Rogerian therapy, and it was something that was founded by a psychologist by the name of Carl Rogers. And what he has is this grandpa approach. We know that when we were kids, we could always go to grandpa, we could always go to grandma. And most people, whenever they're dealing with anxiety and depression, they want someone to be able to talk to. They want to talk about their feelings. And basically what a lot of them are looking for is a listening ear. So once you can provide a person with a safe environment, a comfortable environment, an environment where they know that what they're telling you is going to be confidential, you can do all of the work that you need to do. And that's one of the things that I provide in my therapy. It's a safe place. It's a safe haven. It's that one place where they can come and they're not going to be judged for their feelings. Because there are so many times in our, especially in American society, where if a person is suffering with anxiety or depression, we tell them to just get over it. It's not as serious as they're making it out to be. And the therapist is going to allow that person to be able to come in, have a safe place, talk about what they want to talk about, and in order that it's not going to be gossiped about or, you know, anything like that. It's only between those two people.
Good stuff. And if you're just joining in, Real Entrepreneurs TV, we are interviewing Travis Darnell, Master of Arts and licensed psychological counselor. And we're talking about how to overcome feelings of anxiety, fear, uncertainty, and depression. So talking through your issues is one way that you
Correct.
mentioned. So, and I'm guilty of telling people to get over it. So what's wrong with that? If somebody tells me an issue, they're venting, and I give them the resources that you gave me. Well, if you feel like this, then you should collaborate your resource with people. You should reach out to a social worker. And if you don't do that, don't talk to me about it anymore. So what's the issue with handling people with those emotions in that way?
Well, the issue with that is that we all have something that another person may feel that we just need to get over. One of the things, especially in this time, and man, this is perfect, and I'm glad that you brought it up, is that we have to be understanding, we have to be caring, and we have to be careful with our words, okay? Because you see some people, you know, they have some people out there, I'm not going to the store, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to go out and live my life and, you know, even get the things that I need. And to some of us, we may say, man, that's stupid. I don't understand why you're not willing. You know, it's not that big of a deal. But also, we don't know what this person may have experienced as a child. Maybe they lived with someone with an autoimmune disease where they easily became sick. So our past and our foundation, a lot of the times, is what make us who we are. And sometimes that's why some people have a higher risk, are at higher risk of having things like anxiety and depression and all of those sorts of things. So sometimes we want to be able to try our best not to sympathize, right? Which means just to feel sorry for someone. But in a time like this, we need to empathize, where we actually take our feet and put them in the shoes of the people who we're judging. And that's what happens in therapy. We use empathy and not sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think that's good advice. So the talk therapy that you mentioned is a good solution for the depression
Correct.
and anxiety. So let's talk about fear right now. Is that same application? Is that applicable for fear as well?
Well, I'm gonna say this: talk therapy, and the one that I gave out, it's fantastic. It works because the beauty of talk therapy is that if you have somebody who's using that type of style, you're going to continue to go to therapy. You're going to continue to get better because you feel comfortable with that person. At a time like this, I don't know how well talk therapy can work because, again, most of the things that we're doing are via cell phone, via computer, and all that stuff. So another form of therapy that I'm big on is called cognitive behavior therapy. And cognitive behavior therapy was something that was created by a psychologist and a medical doctor, and his name was Aaron T. Beck.
Mm-hmm.
And in cognitive behavior therapy, there are some things in there, and it's called the ABCs. You have the activating event. Okay, so the activating event where we are right now is the coronavirus. You have the behavior, okay, how you react to the coronavirus. And then we have consequences. All right, so the activating event, there's nothing that we can do about that. And that's with anything in our lives. An activating event can be the death of a family member. There's nothing that we can do about that. But
Mm-hmm.
the behavior we can change, and as a result, we get better consequences. And you can find cognitive behavior therapy worksheets. They're out there. They're on the internet. They're free, and it's a great self-help therapy to use if you don't have access to actually go out and sit in front of a therapist. And the whole family can use it. You know, you can have a mom who can use it with a son, a father who can use it with a daughter, and vice versa. And that's also another great form of therapy that I use, because you want to get in and